So hi, everyone. My name is Jake. I'm the Education Program Manager here at Waterfront Alliance. We are a nonprofit based here in New York City with program areas focused on design guidelines, advocacy and policy, and education. Just to highlight the education program a little bit, we work throughout all 5 boroughs of New York City to connect students, teachers, community organizations, all with our local waterfront. So today's webinar is titled Exploring Green and Blue Career Pathways, Opportunities for a Sustainable Future. This webinar will explore the expanding fields of green and blue careers, highlighting diverse opportunities in renewable energy, sustainable construction, environmental conservation, and more. So I'm happy just to jump right in and introduce our panelists who are going to be speaking on this wonderful conversation today. So Vikram Krishnamurthy, he leads the Tree Equity Alliance, a cross-sector initiative launched by American Forests to unite diverse national partners in supporting the national tree equity movement. Prior to joining American Forests, Vikram served as the ED of the Delaware Center for Horticulture, an urban greening nonprofit based in Wilmington. In addition to reinventing DCH's Branches to Chances workforce and reentry program, love that name, he helped to launch the Delaware River Climate Corps program. And he brings experience in urban forestry, land conservation, and local food system, all of which contribute to his commitment to equity and environmental justice. Andrés Henríquez, EDC Director of STEM Education Strategy. He's a national expert in science career readiness, educational technology, and policy. He brings extensive experience in philanthropy, having served as a program officer as the National Science Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation of New York. He's leading several initiatives focused on improving STEM education, career readiness, and workforce development to meet the growing demand to create a future-ready workforce. Latoya Wilson, she's a career development advisor and founder of Wilson Career Pathway Consultancy. Inspired by her work integrating workforce programs into economic development, she has guided diverse student populations through federally funded initiatives, connecting them to employers and opportunities. Her leadership spans youth investment, public-private partnerships, and urban revitalization through innovative, inclusive projects. Latoya holds degrees in business administration and public administration and is committed to building global collaborations for sustainable community growth. Tonya Gale, the executive director of Green City Force. She led GCF's development team from July 2014 to September 2020. She's a board member of the Core Network to focus on national service and environmental advocates of New York focused on environmental justice. Prior to joining GCF, Tonya served in public-private partnerships at the New York City Housing Authority and the Sponsors for Educational Opportunity Career Program. She has spent most of her career in nonprofit organizations focused on economic justice for young people of color. And last, but certainly not least, is Paola Garcia. Paola is the founder of Born Carbon, climate education and stewardship initiative rooted in biophilic design and green infrastructure. As a Green Roof professional and former adjunct professor of sustainable systems at Parsons, she has developed bilingual climate science curricula and led projects centering youth in frontline communities. Her work spans earthship builds, urban farming, and high-level curation, all driven by a deep commitment to resiliency and equity. Paola's vision bridges ecological innovation with human-centered design to foster regenerative futures. Just to go through our format very quickly today, Paola is going to actually walk through our Waterfront Alliance's new Green and Blue Career Guide that she helped develop. She's going to take about 5 minutes to go through that, and then we're going to jump right into moderator questions and discussion. We have about 7 to 8 questions for our panelists today, ranging from about 5 to 6 minutes per question. And then we'll wrap up with an audience Q&A at the end. So Paola, happy to turn it over to you to go over the Blue and Green Career Guide.
Hi, everyone. Very great to be here. Just downloading this guide. So very excited for today. We have been working on this Blue and Green Career Guide, as Jake said, for a while now, and we're excited for our students in New York City to use it and for our greater community. I've worked a lot with Farhana and Arya, and Jake and the Waterfront Alliance community has really made this happen. So you will all have access to this guide today, but we're going to give you a little sneak peek right now. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can take a look at this. I will say it's pretty comprehensive and robust, which we did on purpose so that our students feel fully equipped with some tools and also with a sense of what some of these blue and green careers look like. Jake, I'm really sorry. I didn't get this in time.
No problem. Paola, would it be easier if we shifted it to the end, like right after our moderator questions?
Properly, if you don't mind.
Of
And
course.
thank you. So I'm going to stop my share. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody.
No, no problem at all. Yeah, yeah, we can just keep it moving. We'll just jump right into our questions and then come back to the guide at the end. All right. So yeah, happy to throw the first question out there, and I'll also be putting it into the chat. But just to kick us off, and this is for all panelists, can you define what green and blue careers mean to you? And could you share your work that you're doing with this in your own space?
I'd be happy to kick things off.
Amazing.
I think when I think of green and blue careers, I really think about conservation and stewardship. So I think green and blue careers really have a focus on both caring for the earth and our environment and also working to protect it, whether that's through specific conservation measures, energy conservation as an example, land and water conservation, but then also restoration and it involves new technologies and really reducing the impact of the human footprint on our planet and all the varieties of ways that we can do that.
I can go next. Echoing, I imagine we're all going to have very similar answers, but I hope so. Anyway, hi everybody. Yeah, I would say blue careers are exciting to me because I think most people haven't thought about water as much in the world of sustainability historically as maybe what we've typically called green jobs. I think arguably over time, more and more just careers period are going to be overlapping with green and blue, but high level things that are about clean energy, smart cities, utilizing water, reducing, improving air quality, and coming up with innovative modes of whether it's transportation or production, building sustainability, all of those things I would say are the buckets of blue and green careers. And I think the volume of what used to be a blue and green career versus what's happening going forward is going to like flip in terms of ratios. Actually, that's my opinion.
I guess I could go next. And we could talk about, it's interesting. I focus more on green more than blue careers, but as someone who grew up in the Long Island Sound in Connecticut, and as parents who live in the shore, I mean, I also look at blue careers in terms of, people rely on fishing and crabbing in terms of their career, but most importantly, provide healthier food for the environment. So, blue careers do play a part in terms of economic development projects where I focus on a lot. So, obviously to provide a healthier food or ecosystem, our ocean, our water has to be clean, in addition to be able to accomplish those goals. So, I mean, I know in terms of my work, I tend to tie into these career pathway projects to introduce the next generation to be able to manage these projects. I mean, we could come up with so many ideas of how to protect our ecosystem and, in terms of our environment and most importantly in terms of our waters, but we have to have the next generation to be able to manage those in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go last. I think I won't add to what the definitions are. I just want to add a couple of thoughts to this. One is that we are seeing at the Education Development Center that green and blue careers and the definitions depend on where you are regionally. You can have very different definitions. depending on the region where you are coming from. Yeah, because in the Southwest, where there's a really dry, um, very dry heat related issues, the greening, it means very different things than what it means in the Northeast. So we see that there are overall similar definitions, but very hyperlocal ones as well. And I think we need to keep that in mind. And the other piece is that this is an opportunity in terms of defining it, is to really keep it broad, but also ensuring that we are filling the opportunity gaps that exist within the green and blue learning. There's a lot of inequality distributed, particularly by gender and race, and trying to ensure that different communities are really have an opportunity to join this work.
I guess the last thing I'll add is altogether everything of what you've said, but having a perspective on the natural world, water and green and nature included. Obviously, the different geographies will demand different kinds of work, but if we just think of how we impact all of the space and biohabitat around us, that is one way to kind of consider it a blue or green task or job. So.
Yeah, thank you for those answers. I feel like they all tie in together pretty well. So I'm going to jump into the next question just to keep us on track. And this one we'll have Tonya, if you don't mind starting. So question 2, how do your programs or initiatives support career readiness, especially for youth and individuals from under-resourced communities? Which I think we touched a little bit about question 1.
Sure. So Green City Force is a national service workforce training program, and we are focused heavily, primarily on the 500,000 people in the community of the New York City Housing Authority across the 5 boroughs of New York. And so we're working with 18 to 24-year-old young people who come from either public housing in New York City or affordable or supportive housing. So low-income New Yorkers who may or may not have formal exposure to these career tracks, although their lived experiences are addressing or responding or being subjected to all kinds of environmental injustices where they live. And so we're bringing folks into a space where we're talking about eco literacy, we're talking about environmental hazards that prioritize frontline communities, we're connecting the dots between what someone's personal experience is in terms of health disparities or challenges or flooding or resilience challenges, and translating that into opportunity to be motivated to hear about, okay, what are the trainings and skills that can happen for these young people that would allow them to actually be solution oriented and part of the solutions to address these issues in their communities. So we're doing national service as a way to motivate people to feel like response to community and leadership, and at the same time building their technical training skills so that they can be competitive for the jobs that are coming in the future.
If I could chime in, because my work is very, very much aligned with Tonya's. Tonya, it's great to connect with you. American Forest is a national organization, and I didn't talk in the previous answer about what I do in this space, but basically at American Forest, we're focused on the concept of tree equity. So what data and research shows is that neighborhoods of color and neighborhoods of lower income have measurably hotter temperatures and temperature differences compared to the surrounding city averages, and we have developed a powerful tool called Tree Equity Score. I'll put this in the chat after my comments. But I think in terms of some of the support that we provide for career readiness, we have several curricula that we've developed. One is called our pre-apprenticeship, pre-employment curriculum. That covers basic tree care, knowledge base materials, but also includes job readiness components as well. And then we have a different curriculum that's called our Tree Equity curriculum that really is for young people to, it's a self-exploratory way for young people to discover their own affinities and their own, likes, dislikes, their own strengths and talents when it comes to seeking out and exploring green careers. The third one that I'll mention is under development right now. What we have assessed is that there are a number of urban forestry training programs that serve justice-involved individuals, and there's no real North Star sort of guidance for those organizations. In other words, there are urban forestry professionals who are tasked with delivering programming to an audience with whom they're not trained in reentry topics or workforce development for the most part. So we're developing a reentry curriculum to provide guidance for those organizations to really upskill the urban forestry professionals who are delivering those programs to individuals. And so that involves a component of working with Opportunity Youth as well. We have a real need in the urban forestry industry for new professionals, and it's not a very diverse field. So we're working on these in these different ways to diversify the field as well.
I'd like to add, as far as readiness, when it comes to readiness, I think we need education across the board. We feel more ready when we understand what's in front of us. And I think a worthy effort and task force to mention that I'm a part of is the Climate and Resilience Education Task Force. We advocate for climate change education in pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. We've tried to get legislation in place so that this is ensured on a long-term, massive scale in our education system. But we've also advocated for pre-service training, for professional development opportunities for teachers to feel prepared themselves. And we also advocate for workforce development and pathways. There is a continuum to our learning throughout every year and chapter of our life. So the education goes in tandem with the workforce development. And we also promote stewardship. We have actually very active with the Credit Youth Steering Committee that is also very diverse from across the boroughs. We try to cross the state as well. And I think, again, if we equip youth and adults with information, we feel more ready. And this program also works in tandem with the Resilient Schools and Communities program, which also deals with a lot of restoration in the coastal communities like in Coney Island. And I think that all helps us feel more empowered to confront whatever's in front of us.
So I live in New Jersey, where climate change education is actually mandated for K-12. So students are required to learn climate change. And luckily, my last project, I was able to work with a renewable energy company, which is based out of New York, actually. We brought it to New Jersey, where we used their smart pole that they designed and have installed at several schools. So several 4-school districts was able to apply for this grant, and we're able to incorporate that into learning tool material in addition to their curriculum. So not only students get to learn how the smart pole was designed to address climate change, but it also generated data where students were able to analyze the difference between solar and wind power generation. So one thing for sure is it's one thing to teach students the idea of addressing climate change, whether through green and blue economy, but what type of careers, what are the opportunities that's going to be involved once they're done after graduation. So like, for students, okay, I'm sitting in this class and I'm learning this certain tool, but why is it important to me? Why should I learn it? And basically, hey, listen, this is something that you may end up incorporating into your career as you go further into the workforce.
All right. I think we can move into the next question unless anyone else has anything to add. So moving to question 3. So what kind of skills, either technical, interpersonal, or otherwise, do you see as most critical for success in green and blue careers?
Oh, I think I can kick that one off. So I'm at the Education Development Center, the EDC, it's called, and we've been around for 70 years almost. We are mostly a group that does lots of curriculum development around science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but lots of other things as well, in health and in workforce. And the work that we're doing around the green and blue um, uh, an ecosystem, I should say, is really focused around workforce, but also really the things that we want to see are the kinds of things that, yes, that the young people get trained in green and blue skills, but that they are that some of these skill sets are also transferable, right, to other kinds of career paths, etc. Um, we had a meeting last year where we convened economists, educators, practitioners, and young people to think about these very issues about you know, what does the green and blue workforce mean? What's it like to be in what's it like to be advocating for this kind of work? What do we see the number of jobs that are going to be out there in the near future for this? And the convening was over 120 people or so. And some of the skills that, you know, that are most important for the green and blue workforce, according to some of these folks, are very similar to the kinds of things that we want for lots of our young people in terms of sort of you know, skills that we want all of them to do in our coursework. So one of the biggest ones we did a what we did is one of those, you know, Wordle kinds of things where you put up like, what do you think? And the big words come up, you know, but systems thinking, collaboration, critical thinking were the three most, the biggest kinds of skill sets that that folks wanted. You know, these are still the kinds of things that we want both for young people for those kinds of skills. They also want folks who are strategic thinkers, I should say, and analytical thinkers. So a lot of issues around data that's really necessary. And I think on the soft skills side, you know, they really wanted people with empathy, folks who can really understand what young people or families might be going through, whether they live in, you know, out in Coney Island or Sandy Hook or in the Gulf of in the Gulf area. So that kind of empathy is was really critical and something that that the folks at the meeting really emphasized. The other piece was, you know, no surprise here, but, you know, communication skills, you know, and learning how to do that, particularly when you're working in different communities where you want to do the kind of community outreach that you need. So those are, you know, there's some other things that people talked about, really committed to social justice. We want all that for all our young people, of course. But, you know, the big things are, you know, collaboration, systems thinking, you know, critical thinking skills, communication, problem solving skills. Those are the kinds of things that we want for young people to do this field. And again, those are the kinds of things that are transferable skills that you can do both in the green and blue workforce, but also in any other kinds of career trajectory that you might be taking. I'll stop there. And Jake, I'm going to reboot because I'm sort of frozen in my Zoom. So I'll be back on in a second because I want to make sure to put some links in the chat, which I can't do at the moment.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for letting us know. Cool. Would anyone else like to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that. So to build on Andres' point about transferable skills, they're the technical and the practical, right? The actual vocational skills you need. And so that could be if you use offshore wind, for an example, you need, you know, you can get a job in construction training that might be not be a direct hire for offshore wind, but construction skills would be valuable in a future state. And then you can go on to a different opportunity and get trained as an electrician, for example. And that's a skill that could be used obviously across all different types of work experiences and career tracks. And then you might get an opportunity years later to be involved in some offshore wind project. But from the issue of equity and thinking about communities that are historically left out of these experiences, something that folks may not consider that's very real is practically a lot of inner city young people don't necessarily have comfort with water. And so you might, in an exposure and a momentum way, be intentional about thinking about all the perspectives of what that work experience involves and whether or not the people you're trying to position to be competitive for those opportunities have like real life exposure to those things. So it's not an obvious criteria, but it's things like that are important to be mindful of when you're talking to communities and thinking about like what they're used to, what they're comfortable with, and how you can expose them in very easy ways that would make them more viable, in addition to what they obviously need, whether that's the construction or the electrician, etc. Same thing for the trees work. We do urban agriculture assessments in NYCHA with our graduates. And the next step is like, okay, where's the job at the Parks Department? But, from the policy perspective, we need folks to understand that you need to know skills to cut down a tree. You don't need a college degree to cut down a tree. So there are lots of sort of obvious to the folks going through the experience. It doesn't always translate to sort of the designers of workforce programs. And I think it's really important to sort of meet people where they are and be intentional about naming the things that actually will lead to success. And then also like lifting up what's already really strong. So to the point of resilience and strategic thinking, a lot of underserved people spend their lives being strategic and problem solving oriented, and they don't translate that to how it can be actually relevant to career track. So I think there are lots of different ways you can kind of leverage people's individual experiences and do the translation piece in terms of how that maps that in ways that may not be obvious to a typical career track or employer partner.
Can I also add one skill that tends to experience a lot of gap, and that is STEAM, science, technology, engineer, arts, and math. When you're talking about innovation and, like we talk about how agriculture is changing to agritech, creating apps that will allow folks to have access to order their food through agriculture, or in engineering or any other projects that geared towards green and blue economy. There's still a lot of gap in those skills, especially when you're talking about an underserved community. And unfortunately, a lot of those students were steered away from those type of skills. Like for instance, I would have a student that told me, I'm not interested in math, my mind shut off. And my question to them is it that you're not interested in math, or your mind just shut off in math? I mean, you could tell, listen, when I was younger, I would steer away from math. I thought math was my enemy. Now I tutor in math. I can calculate things in my head. So it's about how do we get these young folks to gain confidence into that, so that way they could get into more complex careers, and that occurs in green and blue careers.
All right, I think we can roll into our next question. Just for our panelists, I'm going to skip ahead one question just because I feel like it ties very well into the answers that you've all given. But I love the conversation about collaboration, systems thinking. But this next question is focused on technology, which can both support and provide, issues to what we've been talking about. So question 5. What emerging trends or technologies are shaping the future of green and blue careers? And Vikram, if you wouldn't mind starting off the conversation.
Sure, thanks, Jake. In thinking about this, it occurred to me that there are the technologies themselves that are making a difference when it comes to environmental conservation, things like wind and solar technologies, and also the careers and the jobs and skills training that those industries provide. I, like others, are pretty much have a focus on green jobs as opposed to blue jobs, but I do think of things like wave energy technology and other things that involving water would be part of this consideration. There are also a lot of engineered technologies. So I'm familiar with stormwater practices and stormwater modeling that We know that green infrastructure can really play a role in controlling and filtering stormwater runoff. And so the technologies and engineering solutions that go into things like streetscapes and installations that are designed specifically with plants in mind that can both capture water runoff, filter it, and slow the volume of stormwater runoff. Those technologies are all very important as well. In terms of, I can speak specifically to urban forestry, and I know that I'm familiar with things like city tree inventories that are digital and converted to GIS mapping. So there's a whole GIS component to technology that offers career pathways for people. And there are technologies used for monitoring and measuring urban tree canopy, forest health, things like that, things like remote sensing, satellite imagery, all forms of remote sensing that really can help us monitor conditions on the ground and under the water as well, in terms of tools and technologies that are available. And of course, we hear, it feels like every day we hear about the new influence of artificial intelligence. And so as of right now, because the other thing I hear is that it's changing so rapidly and developing so rapidly, even what we see today is not going to be what we see in the future. What I have seen regarding AI when it comes to green jobs and green careers in conservation and restoration is good news. It's that AI, for the most part, is anticipated to support the work of conservationists and specifically foresters, not replace people in green and blue jobs, because one of the aspects is those very skills that Andrés mentioned as being important for young people: critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, interpersonal communication, and building interpersonal relationships, collaboration. Those are the things that AI is not going to be able to replace when it comes to human beings. And so I think all of those aspects of skills development and employable job readiness skills, I think those are things that we're still going to need people to do.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to say something based on what Vikram just said regarding trees also. This year is the 10th year where New York City counts their trees and does an inventory of the street trees particularly. And the internet and smartphones and apps were a big tool that were used. If you haven't checked it out, New York City Parks has an amazing tree directory. So you can even put like a cross street and see the age of the tree, the type, all of those things. But it was very cool. I did one session with them where with an app, our very own phone, we can put a dot of what tree we're looking at. It will give the name. We can highlight the health of the tree, from the branches to the leaves. It's a very complete app. So I think the use of apps and integrating that into like citizen science has been really interesting for me. And another thing I'd like to quickly mention, taking it to water, I was also recently part of a project addressing microplastics and marine debris collection. So there is a robot, a mollusca robot that is inspired by an apple snail. It's a Cornell, Sea Grant, and Princeton collaboration. And it was a very cool opportunity to work with all these professors and scientists and robotics experts. And they created a marine debris collector, as I said, for the oceans and the lakes in New York. And a whole bunch of educators created curriculums around that to take back into classrooms. And I thought that was a really brilliant collaboration. And the use of robots to do some of these things is very interesting as well. Still a lot to learn, but I like that innovation. It's piqued my interest a lot.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. Yeah, we can keep going with the next question. And this one's going to be focused towards you, Latoya, and something that's honestly like very, very interesting to me as well, which is the role of public-private partnerships and expanding access to green and blue career opportunities.
Yes. So public-private partnerships can be a complex thing. Most importantly, with private industries, because like I said, I work with a company who actually designed a smart pole, and obviously I'll be working with additional companies who have innovated different projects that they could bring into K to 12 students and as well as young adults. But private industries can actually allow students to gain hands-on experience in addition to academic courses. Most importantly, they can offer like work-based learning and internship opportunities because it's one thing that students are learning these projects. They also have to apply into the workforce. When you think about private industries, they're the ones that are demanding the skill, these types of different skills from future talent. So it would be their responsibility to offer some type of assistance with curriculum development that matches those required skills. Like I said, I've worked with these things in with green industries. Obviously, this can also be it can also happen as well for blue industries as well. But one thing as a liaison, I've always had to pay attention to how both sectors are set up based on distinct needs. So, like private industries, they obviously they have to focus on meeting the bottom line because they are profit based. At the same time, they can also provide, some type of support system, whether it's financial system or also resources system to these private industry, these public industries. With public industries, many of them have to rely on grant funding, especially if they're purchasing many of these projects from private, from private contractors. So funding can also play a role in it as well. So for like private industries, they have to determine whether if they want to meet their bottom line, but at the same time, they want to provide these type of support systems to these public industries, and at the same time, not run there could be a lot of frustration because, when you talk about private industries, they're used to instant cash transaction when you're talking about their private customers. But when you're talking about public entities, that's when you have to gain approval through the political process. In addition to grant funding, it's a lot more red tape when you're talking about funding for these programs. But at the same time, we always believe that public-private partnerships are extremely important because it's one thing when we're teaching students these programs, but private industries can provide some insights on these are exactly the skills that you need, and also also allow students to use certain equipment to be able to do some type of hands-on. As you know, with my project, when I teach career readiness, I do hands-on real-world activities, and it's not totally possible without the use of resources that are coming out of these private industries that have innovated many of these projects.
I'd like to add to that, or at least dovetail with that, to Latoya's point. The public-private piece is critical in terms of what's happening in terms of the workforce is there's a lack of articulation between what's happening in schools and what's happening in the workforce. And I think where the public-private piece can come together are really more alignment between the demands of the workforce and the industry, where industry is, and backward designing the necessary skills and competencies that are needed to ensure that young people are getting those competencies and skills. As Latoya was saying, starting internships and ambassadorial programs for young people so they can understand, the kinds of demands that are happening in industry would be of great value. In addition, there could be a lot better articulation between high schools, community colleges, and four-year institutions about what those workforce skills are and the kinds of needs of the industries. And I think that needs to be happening with close partnership with industry. And of course, this is the industry is happening, the changes with the technology are happening so quickly. In chips, for example, the CHIPS Act, where young people are thinking about and working on semiconductors, there's a lag between like where the factories are and they're being built, and a lot of kids are being trained, but there's not a curriculum yet. The factories aren't built yet. So there needs to be a lot more coordination. And I think similarly, we can learn from these other fields where the coordination is really, really critical. So I think we need to bring industry much more closely into the public sector.
Amazing. Thank you for those answers. Andres, I love that last point you brought up. And for the panelists, I'm going to skip to question 7, just to build off of that. And so this is open to any panelist who wants to answer or continue the conversation. So the question is, what are some effective models for integrating sustainability and workforce training into K through 12 or higher education? And what advice would you give to educators looking to get involved in green and blue careers? And I'll put this in the chat as well.
I'd like to start off by saying, where the landscape in terms of is changing greatly given the policies, the shifting policies that are happening in our country now. Unfortunately, we had an enormous wind at our backs when in the previous administration with the Inflation Reduction Act and so many other policy issues that were out there that were incentivizing industry and educators to actually pursue this kind of work. I'm hoping, some effective models are what Latoya mentioned in terms of the fine work that they're doing in New Jersey, where it is a policy shift where governors and local politicians could really begin to really think about their local environments and think about how they can leverage policies to ensure that K-12 and higher education are actually replying to some of the policy shifts that are happening. It's not going to happen nationally. It's going to happen on a state-to-state basis. I think the work, for example, that's happening in New Jersey is probably one of the finest models in terms of where the governor's wife, First Lady Murphy, really wanted to make sure that environment and sustainability was actually going to be taught in K-12, and they have some really interesting pilot projects out there.
Yeah, and just to piggyback, because as someone who lives in New Jersey, yes, I mean the concept of career and technical institutions have transitioned so much to the point where like private industries are not only encouraged but are becoming required to incorporate some type of advisement in K to 12. And so once the climate change mandate came into place, not only New Jersey Department of Labor took leadership into creating those type of curriculums, but also invited different industries to come in and utilize their projects, so that way students can develop some hands-on. I mean, that's I would say this, it was very exciting. The project that I did with this company in New York. I mean, I would have never thought that it would have been possible to K to 12 because of so many processes that it would take to get approval. But because of the climate change mandate and because of the grant that followed, I would say probably a year later, it took a little bit, but things are possible. And now we're seeing more schools gaining partnerships with not only the industries, but are utilizing resources where students can not only gain hands-on experience or training into, like I said, solar versus wind power generation resources, or even when we're addressing stormwater or flooding, which is becoming an issue in New Jersey. But and like I said, in Atlantic County, where they're building, wind power resources, and they've partnered with the Cape May Community College. As a matter of fact, I'm part of New Jersey Pathway, where we're incorporating resources where community colleges play a huge role into incorporating workforce development. And one of the things we viewed was a lot of students that were coming into, that were in actually in high school, they were creating projects where they were able to innovate projects and how, you know, these projects were able to solve problems in our New Jersey Pathway Summit. Also in Think Tank, you know, I also judge a Think Tank in New Jersey where, you know, they're encouraging young people to utilize, you know, to focus on how they can utilize renewable energy sources, and also even in blue projects to solve problems. And it's amazing how you see these young people, how they love to innovate. Like, you know, it's one thing when they're in a classroom and they're learning courses, but to actually do hands-on projects. I mean, it's amazing to see how excited they were to be part of that. So I would say definitely more real world hands-on will definitely be a great model.
Amazing.
Quickly
Yeah,
mention
yeah.
very quickly. Just to take it also a little bit outside of the classroom, the Billion Oyster Project does a lot across the boroughs, and I've seen the pathways that they've created. I know kids who have started as students and had an internship, and it's led to a real job. And there's so much programming that they do around water quality testing, and it's also, some of it is project based. And I think that's also a direction that our educational system is going, to see how we can address education and make it maybe more creative and interesting and fun again. And how do we make these connections to nature? We can't just do that in the classroom all the time. BOP does have, a Billion Oyster Project does have a program now where you can have oyster tanks in the classroom. So that's bringing a little bit of nature into the classroom. So that's a worthy organization to check out if you haven't heard of it already.
Amazing. Thank you, Paola. So we are running up on time. So I either have one more question, or Paola, do you want to go into the Blue and Green Career Guide and walk through some of it for the next 5 or so minutes?
Sure. Let's try this again. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I'm ready for you this time. Let's share. Okay. Okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me try to make this bigger. So I feel like, and I hope that we're all inspired to
Oh, Paola, I think you went on mute.
let me see. Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So this is a resource we're really proud of. And as I said, we created it with the Waterfront Alliance group. And it's pretty long, so I will go through it quickly. We have standard table of contents. We have tried to make it engaging with different photos and images and interactive components. Brief introduction. Again, I'm going to go kind of faster because it's a lot on what climate change is. We wanted to center our thoughts around environmental justice and different vulnerable communities. And why is this area of blue and green careers growing so quickly right now as well? So we have some kind of snapshots on these subjects, and then we do break up the guide into going deeper into green careers and blue careers by sectors. We give a little bit of data on how much this is growing and what field and how this can help. We really hope that this is a resource that kids and students really refer to often. So this is an example of one of the snapshots we did. Again, so this area is more like clean energy and renewable power. We had several titles, and then we have where they work, what's the pathway, and a skill needed to either do the job or succeed at doing the job. So we tried to just kind of give a little taste of it all to inspire curiosity and interest, so that on your own time or on the student's own time, they kind of put on their researcher caps and continue diving deeper. So we really try to be pretty comprehensive in different areas of this work because it is very vast. Blue and green can mean so many different things. So stormwater mitigation and climate resiliency is a big one. And we tried to use the same format, so it's pretty clean and clear to read. Advocacy work, also how do the arts and humanities and culture fit into this work? You know, we think that this fusion of disciplines is important also. So this is just kind of a glimpse, and now we're going into more of the blue careers with the same format. And this is officially launched today, so you'll all have it available to you, so you don't have to breeze through it as quickly as I am going through it. But we think that, and we hope that this inspires curiosity, as I said. And once the kids kind of review all these profiles, we want them to think about themselves. And there's a little self-audit section. We want them to think about questions that may not be as standard when we talk about this. Who do you want to work for? Is it the government? Is it your neighborhood? Like, what scale? What do you love to do? So we put some verbs. What is like your action that you love to do or comes easy for you? Are you an innate designer, or do you like to cook? Do you like to debate? When do you feel most productive? Is it in the morning? Is it on a weekend when you're alone or in a team? Where do you like to work? Indoors, in a lab? What do you want to work on and learn? Again, getting them to think about this and having some pointed questions to kind of direct their thinking. What are your current strengths? And so we think this is an important part of the guide. After, they're inspired, then hopefully they can do some self-audits, as we said. Okay. And then, just kind of like be in the head in your clouds and encourage you to dream. Some areas where they can either fill it in if they print out this guide, some icons that may help illustrate the kind of tools that they want to use, or, maybe see themselves in a marine environment. Are they fishing? Are they scuba diving? Are they the captain of a ship? Are they building something, welding? So we just wanted to create, in this guide also opportunities for them to really synthesize, jot down their own notes, and maybe like kind of carve out their own pathway and visually see it on the page. We also went beyond that. We covered a little bit of backgrounds on different subject areas, and based on the skills that we presented earlier on, what those can maybe look like. Science clubs and different clubs that they can join, volunteer opportunities, internships and conferences they can attend. We really wanted to spell out opportunities because, I know that this is a robust, guide, but any high schooler who's really interested or student in really building up their career, we hope that this offers enough. We went in on different accreditations, on different CTE programs. Even like Waterfront Alliance has a wedge program, which is for waterfront edge design guidelines. There are some great tools and resources at our fingertips here in New York, and we want them to know they exist. And a lot of things are hyperlinked. We have a resume template just for them to sample. We have a business card template they can print out and cut, just to inspire them to start networking in real time. Just ideas, but maybe these are some tangible tools that help them kind of, activate a little bit more. So a little summary, and then just an acknowledgement to our team. But we're really excited to produce this and circulate it, and we hope that the students find it interesting and helpful. So we hope that you share it with all the educators and students as well.
Thank you so much for that, Paola. This is really exciting. Again, I'm an educator. I know I'm going to be using this very extensively over the next school year. So thank you so much. We are very much running up on time, and I do want to give the audience a chance to ask any questions that they have. So if there's any audience members who have a question, I know there's a question about where to download the guide, which was put into the chat. Feel free to just type it into the Q&A section. Otherwise, I have one quick lightning round question for all of our panelists, but I'd love to hear what the audience is thinking right now. looks like we have one question coming in. So are there any quick thoughts on career change to blue and green career pathways?
I would, if you are unsure if you want to make that change, I would recommend volunteering. Find an organization or an event that is doing something that interests you and show up and actually do it, you know, and then talk to the people that are there. How do they like it? How do they get that job? I think that's the best way to learn. And, you know, you might find some surprising things you didn't even, you know that you even liked even more about it, but or read a book on somebody who's doing what you like.
I would say that there's a lot of upskilling going on right now, particularly around with unions. Folks who should look into the pipe fitters union, electricians unions, and things like that. That are they have loads of demands. They need electricians. They need and these are the kinds of skills that you think are like your grandfather's old sort of skills, but these are the kinds of skills and competencies that people are using for the green and blue economy. So I would look into the union shops that are fantastic at training and are really fantastic in terms of supporting people to get not only training, but into jobs.
I would also add, I'm a career changer. I did not study green and blue careers, nor did I have this as a known pathway when I was in college. I was an anthropology major, have an anthropology degree. One thing I'd suggest, and Latoya mentioned community colleges. I went back to school and got an associate's degree in horticulture after my 4-year degree in anthropology. And you know, one advantage is you can just take the core courses. You've already satisfied a lot of the general requirements, and so from an education standpoint, that's a great way to go as well.
Another thing with community colleges, what they're doing is called I believe it's called micro credentialing. So rather than having to do a full 2 year, you can just take the classes required to get in the type of skills you need and to get into the workforce. So that's some of the practices that community colleges are doing today as well. So I definitely agree, volunteering, interning, because before you put your money into or time into training, in order to get the idea, you kind of want to kind of get your foot in the door a little bit.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're 1 minute past time, so I do want to wrap up. I also want to remind everyone about Climate Week that's coming up from September 21st to September 28th this year. Waterfront Alliance will be hosting a number of webinars, coastal cleanup at the Castle Hill YMCA. So I just want to put this in the chat for everyone. But again, thank you so much to everyone who attended and to our wonderful panelists. This was a great conversation. And we hope to see you at some of our Climate Week webinars. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.